Welcome viewer, I am Kanhaiya Jha, and in this session I will discuss the disaster management and their intricacies for UPSC examination. You know, disaster management has been the very popular, has been the very vital part of UPSC mains examination. Every year about 4 questions usually coming from disaster management section, and here we will break the area, the dimensions of disaster management in this session. So let us start discussion on the topic disaster management, and this will be quite vital for you as well, so that you will be able to understand which topics shall be prepared by you for your upcoming mains examination. So let us start disaster management. Disaster management is part of your GS paper 3. GS paper 3. And what I said, every year about 4 questions on an average. Coming from this part, 2 questions are short answer questions and other 2 are long answer questions. We shall discuss first the area which are relevant for our preparation. Look, actually disaster management is divided into several branches, and if you will be able to understand all such branches and you have prepared well all such branches as per the demand and requirement of UPSC, you will be able to fetch good marks. So let us identify the area of the disaster management in short. So what I said, disaster management is divided into several branches on an average. We may classify it into 2 broad categories, that is basic. First one is basic and second one is applied or related with several disaster. So first let us understand what are the basic here relevant for you, and you should prepare all such basic for your examination. Basic as far as concerned, so here basic means basic of disaster management. Look, disaster management has evolved recently. Earlier there were no understanding about disaster management. Disaster were considered as the act of God, as unforeseen calamities, and human were considered not enough to control that occurrence. So later what happens, when we came to know that disaster is kind of thing that depending upon our vulnerability, risk and all such things. So an incident can translate into disaster if we are vulnerable. It means if we get affected by disaster, only then an incident may turn into the disaster. So very first thing that is related with the disaster management is the meaning and the conceptual part, we can say. So concept as far as concerned, so here you should prepare very well the meaning of disaster as well as meaning of vulnerability as well as risk, again cycle of disaster. So these are the topic you shall prepare first. What is it? Cycle of disaster. So cycle of disaster earlier kind of unknown thing for us. Cycle of disaster is the level of preparedness. Suppose disaster occurred, in that case our machinery institution may handle that impact of disaster. It means that affected person evacuated as early as possible by the institution, again rehabilitation and their settlement, their suppose all such things may be managed so quickly that the impact of disaster may reduce. So that is the disaster cycle. It involves during disaster, post disaster and pre-disaster course of action. This involves like suppose forecasting of disaster, preparedness, mitigation and all such things. Again, after getting the idea, you shall read the institutional aspect of disaster management. What are the institutional aspects? So institutional aspect means the legal authority or other institution. So what happens, in India, it was 2004 when devastating tsunami hit the coast of India. Our government brought National Disaster Management Act in the year 2005, and with this act, 3 consecutive authorities were created. At national level, it is National Disaster Management Authority. At a state level, it is our State Disaster Management Authority under the leadership of Chief Minister. At district level, it is our District Disaster Management Authority. So we have this type of authority, and you need to understand their structure, their functions. Even what is interesting here, UPSC has considered the recommendation of National Disaster Management Act even quite explicitly. UPSC has asked question upon the report of National Disaster Management Authority. So institutional setup as far as concerned, so you shall prepare NDMA, SDMA as well as DDMA. So DDMA, these are the institutions working in India to prevent, mitigate the disaster and their impact. After that, I am suggesting you shall prepare some international framework. So what happens at international level, after 90s, understanding about disaster evolved. Several conferences were organized under the guidance of United Nations. Among first it was Yokohama, thereafter Hugo, thereafter Sendai framework brought into force, and 2050 to 2030 it will be the Sendai framework that will guide the international community to protect, prevent the disaster. So disaster management evolved by these things as well, and UPSC is considering all such things very relevant for the student preparing for civil services. Even in 2024 there were a question on Sendai framework. So you shall prepare these framework in the way that make you comfortable during the examination. So here institutional framework, like suppose it is our Yokohama framework, again it is Hugo framework, and currently working that is Sendai framework. So this will enable you to understand the mitigation strategy against the disaster. Now last but not the least is our disaster. So what is disaster? Disaster is kind of serious disruption of life. So it may be because of natural calamities, natural happenings, mishappenings, or it may be outcome of man-made causes, like suppose urban fire, even bus accident, even atomic blast may be called man-made disaster. Again, like volcanism, landslide, tsunami shall be considered as natural disaster. So disaster management may be man-made, may be natural disaster. So disaster may be natural, and it may be man-made. So natural disaster as far as concerned, UPSC is taking more seriously natural disaster than the man-made disaster. But you shall keep in mind, every year, suppose this is 2025-26 going on, and if there would be a disaster, in that case that particular disaster will be a question in your mains examination. So must keep in mind, UPSC is giving more weightage the topic which is going on, which are in news, so that you shall prepare those disaster more seriously that happened during the recent past. Okay, so let us discuss natural disaster first. So natural disaster like landslide, even forest fire, even our earthquake, even urban flood, all are very relevant, has been very relevant. UPSC has even on landslide asked about 3 to 4 questions so far after 2023, after 2013. So this way you shall prepare natural disaster and particularly those disasters that have been already asked by UPSC. Only then you may write answer. You know, UPSC is quite strict. India, though experiencing multiple type of disaster throughout the year, but UPSC has selected about 8 to 10 disaster for our examination. So we shall be very focused for mains examination. Just prepare about 12 to 13 disaster, natural disaster, and during preparation, what is quite interesting, what shall be considered? So very first thing, you shall prepare disaster in the way that may enable you to write upon that disaster, explain the reasons behind occurrence, their impact, and even mitigation strategy. So look, and one more thing, UPSC taking here concern of 2 case studies. So explicitly over few years, UPSC has considered 2 case studies for your disaster management. So must prepare in addition with the content to disaster, to past disaster with each natural disaster. Like you are preparing urban flood, so must prepare at least 2 case study for urban flood, so that you will be able to handle the particular area that is being asked here. So again, so natural disaster. Again, as far as man-made disaster is concerned, so keep in mind 1 year current affair. Whatever the disaster occurred during the near past or during that year, that may be probably the question of your examination. Rest of the disaster you shall prepare in a format like what is the meaning of disaster, is there any past experiences, casualty record, even mitigation strategy, international best practices. So you shall carry out, you shall prepare in the way that may cover all possible dimensions of disaster management. Again, one more thing, while writing or answer upon disaster management topic, you shall always keep in mind your answer may be enhanced with support of diagram, with support of map of India, with support of table, graph, even current affairs data. So you shall prepare about 4 or 5 things more while preparing disaster management, like map of India, affected area, even cycle of disaster, or if there is any other thing, again current data report. So in this way you will be able to handle question upon disaster management. This topic, this unit, disaster management, is quite easy to comprehend and easy to handle if you are aware with the geography, polity, even other dimensions of your subject, particularly the structural measure, functional measure, non-structural measure. So this will be easy for you if you have prepared this very well. So for during upcoming lectures, I will explain all such disaster one by one. So thanks for watching all of you, and I am wishing you all the best.